Hey guys, Darren Kelly, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another Captain's Challenge video heading into round 18. Hopefully you guys are all excited for another fantasy round of football. So it is going to be another exciting week because it looks like there's a lot of matchups that are pretty tough this week. When I was going through my top 10 captains, I sort of ran out a few options in the end of the day. So I think we're pretty limited in what we're sort of looking at, but I still think I've found some very good options that we will all be looking at. I think there's a lot of popular players that a lot of people will be talking about. So let's get into it. But before we do, as always, we check out how we did last week. Last week was pretty bad, I'll be honest. 102 for the week with a sub 1600 score. Looking at the scores here, it was okay with, uh, Holmes came in pretty safe after the Bailey Smith out. I threw him at number one. Jared Cobalt, unfortunately, with that injury and Merritt in there, hurt his score a fair bit. If I'd known Merritt was sort of going to play midfield, I probably would have thrown him in there at some stage. Was happy with Brody Grundy at number three there. Noah Anderson definitely saved his score. That was looking pretty terrible at half time with a 22, and Sam Darcy as well saved it pretty late. So overall, probably got pretty kissed in terms of how my captains performed, but it did mean I shuffled down one spot in terms of the overall rankings, but I still managed to catch up points on the top guys as well. So 150 odd points still away from those guys, but yeah, did drop 1 point, one position behind, but still happy where we're at the moment. So hopefully we can bounce back a little bit this week and continue the hunt. So let's get into my top 5 captains for this round. And number 1, I think this is where a lot of people will go, and it is Zack Merritt. He is up against Richmond Tigers. We saw him go massive early in the year with a 149. His run against them is just unbelievably elite. He just goes massive against them all the time. I'll read you out his scores since 2016. So 149, 109, 158, 125, 105, 112, 125, 117. 93, 102, 101, 152, and 115. So he averages 120 against them since 2016. He just loves to play Richmond Tigers at this stage, only dropping below 100 once in that time frame. So this should be a guaranteed 100 for Zack Merritt. If not, should be a walk-up 120, 130, in my opinion. They're a much easier matchup than what they have been, in the past couple of years. They are a bit tougher than what they were at the start of this year, so they are sort of bouncing back a little bit, just with, I don't know, a few different things here and there, but I still think Zack Merritt gets the job done for us this weekend. Whether he's your VC or C, I think you're pretty safe either way. It's Zack Merritt for crying out loud. He will be a pretty safe captaincy option, as he has been for the past decade. So whether you're going there as a VC or C, it doesn't really matter. We've also seen some pretty big scores against Richmond in the past. Just in the last 10, you've got the likes of Max Holmes with a 120, Marcus Bontempelli with a 120, Tom Green with a 119, Jordan Dawson with a 105, and obviously Zack Merritt back in round 12, I think it was, with a 149 as well. So some very decent scores for some very big primo captains. So expecting Zack Merritt to get the job done. I have no concerns with his role at all at this stage. With Calder out, with Parrish out, he's going to play midfield, so he's going to get the job done in there for us, racking up the points. No tag. We know Richmond don't tag either, so it's one of the safest options you can go for with number 1. So he'll be part of my captain options this week, as I am trading him in, as long as team announcers go all perfectly, which fingers crossed that's how it goes. My number 2 is the big ruckman in Brody Grundy. Obviously, he has been massive for the best part of 2 months now. He has the best matchup out of the big ruckman at this stage in the weekend up against Royal Marshall. We saw what Lloyd Meek was able to do against we saw what Lloyd Meek was able to do against Royal Marshall last week, where he had 59 hitouts. So if Brody Grundy can get anywhere near those sort of numbers, he should have another 120 in his bag. He's only scored a 95 against them last year in that one time he versed them, but we know that Brody Grundy from last year to this year is completely different. So expecting another big score from him. We've also seen the likes of Darcy Cameron and Tim English both go 120 plus against Royal Marshall in the last 4 or 5 weeks. So Yeah, definitely expecting another decent score from Brody Grundy. And yeah, if you don't have him, definitely worthwhile looking at if you want to trade him in. Just off the top there, St Kilda are the fourth easiest matchup for Ruckman, particularly. So yeah, expecting Brody Grundy to have another decent one. Number 3 is the other player I'm trading in this week in Zack Butters. He is up against West Coast Eagles. He scored a 107 against them in round 1 last year, so hasn't played them since. It's been a long time, and we know Zack Butters has sort of taken his game to a new level since the start of last year. He sort of had that purple patch in the middle of last year where a lot of people, jumped on him and he was being compared to Gary Ablett Jr. and stuff like that. He is just looking like he's in some fine form up against one of the best matchups for midfielders. So I'm expecting another very decent score from him. Even if I just show you like midfielder scores against, oh my god. Give me 1 second. Don't copy my email. Where are we? So if I go to midfielders here, they are the fourth easiest midfield to score against so far, and just look at the scores against West Coast in the last 10. It's just filled with 100. So this should be a guaranteed walk up 100 for Zack Butters here. If not, hit the ceilings of a 120, 130 quite simply. I can read the scores off here. Obviously, Finn Callahan 120, Nick Dayos 137, Adam Cherry 120, Harry Sheeler 119, Bailey Smith 147, Jordan Dawson 139. It's just lots of green lights. So Zack Butters should get the job done in this matchup and have another field day out and be a really good target for a lot of people. But he does play the last game, so you can wait and see. So if you want to look for a higher ceiling, then definitely he's a easy fallback option who has that ceiling to him. But he does have a pretty poor average against West Coast. I think he only averages, if I show you that here, he only averages, if I click the right one, 66 against West Coast Eagles with 6 matches in his name. And that's the poorest in his career so far. He's had a pretty poor run. A lot of his matches were at the start of his career when he was playing like a small forward sort of type role, where he's getting mostly 50s and stuff. Last year's matchup was realistically the only time where he is predominantly a midfielder that he's scored well. So there are some concerns, but I think Zack Butters is just much better than what he used to be, and he's got that keys to the midfield now in there with obviously Rosie back and Horn Francis sort of spending a bit of time forward and whatnot. I expect Zack Butters to go extremely well in this matchup. So here's another great option. Number 4 is a lot of people will be going with the VC, and that is with Nick Dayos. He is up against the best matchup for midfielders, and that is against the Gold Coast Suns. He averages 127 against the Gold Coast Suns at People's First Stadium in his last 3 seasons. So he absolutely loves playing against them. My only flag, though, however, is he only scored a 115 against them last year. So nothing amazing. And we haven't seen the biggest scores from midfielders at People's First Stadium so far this season. We've got Chad Warner, who was at 119. That took 2 goals to get him to that ceiling. Then you also had Jordan Dawson. I think he went like a 115. Andy Brayshaw was a 113. And then Christian Petrarca was just like a 105 or something like that. So some pretty big names in there who, again, are elite in the midfield, but just aren't able to get it done. So there is some concerns that maybe the ceiling isn't quite there at that stadium at this stage. That is across 4 matches. So there is some data to say that the ceiling's not quite there for the players at that stadium specifically. So that's why I bumped him down a few spots here. He could easily be number 2 with that record and obviously the matchup and whatnot. But yeah, I just think the ceiling's maybe not there that we're looking for in a big VC option early on in the week. And there's also maybe a potential tag. I know I don't want to talk about tags too much because I feel like it's all we talk about these days. But Took Miller, he's been known to do some of those running roles with people in the past. I'd be very surprised if Gold Coast Suns if they're going to be any chance to win this game, I think they need to put some attention into Nick Dayos, and I think Tuchmiller is probably the man to do it. So we'll hopefully get some confirmation of that prior to the game tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I think he's still a valid VC option. Obviously, have a stab in the dark and see how he goes early on Friday. Still expecting probably a 120 plus score from him. We know how good he is and how easily he finds the ball. But my number 5 is the man that went absolutely massive against Richmond last time, and that is Nick Martin. The only reason he is further down this list this time is just probably his recent form hasn't really been the one that's got that blistering sort of pace to him and hasn't really been hitting his straps as of recently. So I've knocked him down a few pegs. Also, it's a later game, so my, I guess, comfortability with putting the C on him is not hugely there. I'd rather him as a much more of a VC option. So if you want to go there, then that's definitely possible. But yeah, like I said, he went 166 against Richmond earlier in the year. So definitely can get it done. The one thing I like about him the most, though, is that he's a good matchup for midfielders, but also for wingmen, which we know Nick Martin is a bit of both. You've got, like I said, with the numbers that I read out earlier, but you also got the wingers in Brian Myers, 102, Davidson, 108, Dersma with a 106, and also a damn Rosio Massimo, however you want to say his name, with a 128. So wingers are getting it done against Richmond, so he should have the best of both worlds and be able to get another big ceiling for you there. We know how big he can go at some stage. So that is my top 5, all very capable of going 120, 130 plus this week, in my opinion. So you got plenty to pick out there from, and hopefully you have all of them. To continue on, though, we go into the next 5. I've got Bailey Smith at number 6. Now, I think we got confirmation earlier today that some Bedford attention will go into the likes of Bailey Smith. It's still a bit of toss-up between does it go to Holmes or does it go to Smith, but they specifically said we have a plan for Bailey Smith, so I can only assume that's going to be a Bedford tag. So that sort of removes him from my top 5 because I just don't know if the ceiling's going to be there for him. I still think he tons up. I still don't think he's one that you're having to trade out just because of this potential tag. You know, he's still miles better than the best F6 option that we have, so I'm not hugely concerned with, you know, potentially trading him out if I was an owner. Unfortunately, I'm not at the stage, but he's just a very safe sort of ton sort of guy, so he's definitely valid at number 6 there. Up against GWS, though, are a bit of a tougher matchup, but as of recently, they have been a bit easier, but again, the tag is the concern. The only big score against GWS recently has been Noah Anderson with a 133. Everything besides that has been, you know, a low ton or sub ton there. So there are concerns, but Bailey Smith, best player in the competition at the moment in terms of fantasy-wise, he should get the job done if you need a safe option there. Number 7, I have then got the likes of Connor Rosie. Where is he? Up there, top. Now, Connor Rosie could have easily validly been in my top 5, but the thing when I looked into him a little bit more is that he doesn't have the ceiling that I'm looking for this time of year. He's a very safe sort of 100 to 120 sort of guy. He went 111 against them late in the start in round 1 last year. But since going to this halfback role, we haven't seen the huge ceiling from him. It's been a very safe, again, 110, 120 sort of player. So there's just no ceiling there for me. And again, he plays the last game, so you have to go there with your C. So I think he's the perfect C option if you want to have a bit of stab in the dark for a huge ceiling in a Nick Martin or a Zack Merritt or any of those sort of blokes that I said before. You can have a stab at them and then just go into a kind of Rosie as a valid C option. He should hit that 110, 120. I just don't know if I see the huge ceiling that we're looking for this time of year. At this stage, just looking at a lot of the matchups specifically for half designated kickouts against West Coast, there just haven't been those massive scores. I think the biggest one I saw was 111 or something like that, and that was by a Lockie Ash. That was pretty much about it. There's nothing amazing. So Connor Rosie definitely could do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not writing you off saying he can't hit a big ceiling, but the evidence there and the data isn't saying that he's going to go absolutely massive. So I just think we have better options, so he's down at number 7. And this is where I sort of ran out of options realistically. Those are the guys that have all the best matchups. and a lot of other guys are getting tags, like an Errol Gordon, like a Wangini Milera. I expect both of them to get a bit of attention. So neither of them make my top 10 list just because of the unknown. Marcus Bontempelli didn't make my list just with the restrictiveness of uh, Adelaide Crows, and also Marcus Bontempelli's been really up and down in terms of his performance. When he comes up against tougher matchups, he really struggles. It's only really against the good ones that he really fires up. So I would like him to stop that trend and hopefully fires again this week, but he does not make my top 10. Neither does Max Scorn up against Tristan Cherry. That's a tough matchup for him. But number 8, I do have the likes of Toby Nankervis. He comes up against Goldstein at Essendon there. I think if Richmond are any chance of winning this game, I think it's going to be on the back of this man. He did not play against them earlier in the year when they obviously got smacked against Essendon. So I think he's going to be backfiring and he's going to have a big day against Toby Nankervis. You know, we've seen some pretty big scores against Goldstein throughout this year, just with obviously he's a bit on the older side. He's not super fit. So we even saw the likes of Ned Moyle last week from Gold Coast Suns. He put up a 90 against him. So expecting Nankervis to hit a 110, he could have easily been in my top 5, but I don't know if, because he's not super fantasy relevant, I didn't want to be a bit scummy and put him in there. I think we have better options anyway. So here's net number 8. Number 9, I did have Harry Sheezel. I do think he can bounce back a little bit against a nice matchup in Melbourne, even though he may spend more time forward with the likes of Parker back and whatnot. I still think with the way that Melbourne like to chip the ball, allow the opposition team to chip the ball around a fair bit, that Harry Sheezel can definitely get involved in that. I'm not expecting a tag or anything to go Sheezel's way. It probably goes LDU and whatnot instead. So he is there at number 9. He went 102 against them earlier in the year, so that's decent. And then I just threw in number 10 as a Andrew Brayshaw, obviously one of the best midfielders so far this year. He went 84 against Hawthorn last year, so not the greatest, but he averages 107 against them in his career, which is a fair few matchups. I'll show you that here. So he does not mind versing them at all. He's had a lot of 120s, 130s, 150s even in the past few years. So he doesn't mind versing them at all. So I think he's a valid option if you want to have a bit more of a stab in the dark. We have seen the likes of, Nick Dayos, Noah Anderson, Lockie Neal, Matt Kennedy, and obviously Jack Steele and Jack McRae all go sort of that 120 plus scores in recent time against Hawks as well. So they are giving up a few points, just specifically to those big midfielders specifically. So that is my top 5. What am I doing this week? I'm probably going to go with the ceiling of Zach Merritt with the VC this week, who I'm trading in, and then following into a Brody Grundy. So going my number 1 and number 2, seeing how that works out. I'm hoping to go with a 125 sort of line. I really want to try and search for that big ceiling, but I'll see how I sort of feel throughout the weekend. If my team's not performing as well as I want it to be, then maybe I'll play with a bit of a safer line just so I don't cop a double whammy there. So that's how I'm looking. Again, my trades, I am still doing Tom Stewart to Butters and Sam Doherty to Merritt. We'll see how teams sort of come out in the next half an hour or so to determine which way, if this is what I continue to go with. Just a bit more of an elaboration why I'm going with this way instead of the Bailey Smith route, obviously besides all the tags and whatnot. The way I like to calculate what's the best moves is I am projecting what I expect these players to score. So I'm going, Zack Butters is a 120 and Zach Merritt should be a 125, 130. So those two combined should be 250 points. And jumping off of a Tom Stewart, who I expect to be an 80, and a Doherty, who I also expect to be around that 80 as well. So that's overall making a huge amount of points just in this trades alone, going 40 points here and potentially 50 points here. So plus 90 points just in these two trades. Whereas if I'm just going a Rankin to a Bailey Smith, even though I expect Rankin to score a 60 and Bailey Smith to score a 120, that's only 60 points better off. So I'm just thinking this is a better trade in terms of I'm getting 30 extra points on field this week. Yes, I'm running the risk without Bailey Smith, but I am feeling a little bit more confident with that now that they've sort of confirmed that he's going to cop a bit of attention this week. And again, I probably expect him to cop a bit of attention next week when it comes to St Kilda and potentially a Windhager tag. So we'll see how that sort of transpires in the next couple of weeks. But that is all for me, guys. Hopefully you have got all your captains sorted for this week, and hopefully your trades are all locked in. I don't think we're going to find too many surprises for team announcements. Fingers crossed. But yeah, let me know what you're going to do for your captaincy this week. Maybe you thought of something that I haven't, but yeah, I think there's some great options out there. So all the best, guys. Have a great weekend, and I will see you again for Monday. Cheers, guys.